Today is January the 1st, 1972. We have all gathered at Grandma and Grandpa Hedrick's house, and we are visiting together and talking over some of the old times in our parents' family history. Grandpa will talk first. Dad, where were you born? And tell us some of the things that were interesting in your young childhood that stands out in your life.
I was born August the 9th, 1897, about a mile north of Fanning. We lived there for about 5 years. And then my father he was first married. He taught schools for about 4 or 5 years around Troy and around Fanning, and then he married my mother and moved to a brand new house, and he had it built himself. It was a big 7-room house. And then about when I was 5 or 6 years old, we moved to Fanning, where Father had already had a store. But before that we moved to Fanning, Father's first store that he built burnt down. And I heard about the store being burnt down, and I walked for about a mile on a hot, dusty road over to Fanning to see Father's store. Father saw me there, and he walked me all the way back. And after we moved to Fanning, we lived there for a good long while. And then we moved to Missoula, Montana for a year. My father didn't like it out there, didn't get much chance to work, and we moved back to Fanning.
Was this move to Montana after your father's second store?
After he built the second store, yes. He rented the store to...
What made him decide to go to Montana?
Well, he just thought he'd go out there. He leased the store to Clyde Conard for about 3 years.
Did he want to do some farming up there?
No, he wanted to go into some kind of business, but there wasn't much there in Missoula at that time. Then we moved back, and we lived at Atchison one winter. While I was at Atchison, I went to school at Martin School. And one day I took my sled to school, and it was very slick streets, icy. And I was sleigh riding down Mound Street, and a team and a wagon came across in front of me. I slid off the sled and run into the water culvert on the corner of the street and cut my leg. And I cried, and they brought me back to the house, and they called a doctor, and he sewed it up. But I had trouble with that leg for some time. Then we moved back to Fanning. Father took over a store there, and we lived there.
What kind of a store was that?
General merchandise store. It sold everything. Father built a blacksmith and had a blacksmith come there and run a blacksmith for a while. Then we bought...
Did you still live in go back and live in the same house?
Yeah.
That
Fanning.
That grandfather built?
He built 2 houses. Built the first house, mother, when they was married. Then he built a house and a store there in Fanning. We lived at Fanning there for quite a while, and then he bought 40 acres of land east of Fanning. And there we fenced it and had cattle, and we had hogs, and we had an orchard there. And Father tried to dig a well, but didn't have much luck finding water. And I had to haul water from Fanning up to the farm to water the cows and the hogs.
Did you haul that by
in a wagon,
Oh.
one horse wagon, a dray wagon. And then we used to have a creek. There used to be a creek running back of our house, and in the summertime, when the heavy rain come, that creek would get out all over everything. It got in the basement of our store, and also got in the cellar of our house, or cellar cave back of the house. And I had a friend by the name of Roy Long, and I had a tin boat, a kind of big square tin thing that I could get in, and I'd wade around or paddle around in this water in this cellar. They got Roy Long in there, and he tipped over and fell in that ice cold water. He said, it's cold, he said. Then in the wintertime, we brought the cow down from the farm and had her over in the barn there close to Fanning. I had to lead her instead of carrying water to her. I didn't like the idea of carrying water to her, so thought I'd lead her to water. And I put a rope around her neck and tried to lead her, and she wouldn't lead. She balked on me, I couldn't go. So I picked up a 2x4 and hit her over the head and knocked her down. I thought sure I'd killed her. But finally her eyes rolled around, and finally she got up on her feet. And I continued. She walked, she was led then. I led her to water. And in 1914, I went to Graceland College and went through the high school and the college there in Graceland. There I met a lot of good friends, Harry Lawrence and the Travis boys, Ralph and Lee Travis, and Paul Suman, Marvin Hendricks, a lot of those fellas, and I played football on the Graceland team. I was a left tackle, played all the time a left tackle. Of course, I went with some girls up there and had a lot of fun. And I did some wrestling. Ralph Travis was a wrestler, and he and I do a lot of wrestling in the basement of the administration building.
Was that the only building they had there at that time?
Yeah, they had an administration building and Patrons Hall, which was a girls' dormitory, and Marietta Hall, which was a boys' dormitory. And then they had a farm there, and they had a bunch of boys down on the farm.
But all those
And I worked part my time.
on the farm
I
down
was
there?
janitor. No, I was janitor in the administration building, and also one year I fired the furnace at night, and one year couple of years I was night watchman. That paid for half of my board when I did that. Now you can ask me some questions.
Were all the classrooms right there in the administration building? I guess? How many
yes,
students
yes.
were on the campus at that time?
Oh, there wasn't very many up there. I don't think there was only
What
about
year was
150.
that?
Well, I went in the fall of 1914. Then when World War I came along, I lost out half a term. I was in the SATC at Midland College. Then the next year I went back, and when I graduated from the junior college, I had 68 credits. But when I went to KU, they'd only allow me 60 credits.
Well, how many years altogether did you go to Graceland then?
Well, about 5.5
Wasn't
years.
that the academy up there?
Yeah, the academy there, but I didn't go through the academy. I went
I
to
see.
the high school. High school 4 years, the high school and 2 years college.
Oh, the high school was part of Graceland at that time.
Yeah.
Is that it?
Mm-hmm.
I see.
KU more than just summer. You went a whole term or two.
Yeah.
Why don't you cover that?
You recall that you did go to KU more than
Well,
just one
okay.
summer
You
2
had
summers and one
and one
winter.
whole year.
one full term.
One full term.
You just
Mhm.
lacked the summer.
I'll just like to lack another summer course to get in a degree.
Bachelor's degree.
And then that summer, that fall, I went to work for the Missouri Pacific, November 3rd, 1922. And I worked for the Missouri Pacific as a car inspector until 1967.
How many years is that? That's 45 years.
years. They gave me a bonus for working 45 years. I get $70 extra
A month?
a month
Is
Pension.
that right?
on top of my Social Security and mother's Social Security.
You just like that good money better than you did going back to school. Is that it?
Well,
What'd you do? Get married?
yeah, I got married. Yeah, I got married.
You mean
Where did you meet where'd you meet Grandma?
Oh,
Hedrick?
yeah, my wife at Lamona, Iowa. I remember very distinctly the first time I saw her, paid much attention to her. She was on the south side of the Grayson College administration building with a bunch of other girls, and a bunch of us boys came along there and sit down, and it was all sitting on the grass. That was the fall of the year, and was talking to them. And I kept looking at her all the time. And I talked to some of the other fellows. I believe I'll get a date with that girl sometime. She said, "Go ahead." Burnham Silvery, I think, already had a date with her a couple of times. So he said, "You can get a date with her, I'm sure." So I got a date with her, and been dating ever since.
There's something wrong with that, Mom? You didn't agree with that?
It wasn't so easy for you.
Wasn't so easy?
No, she was kind of dubious of me.
She was dubious of you?
Why, yeah.
Didn't like
I
the
wore
way you
a pink-
parted your
I
hair?
wore a pink shirt up there one time to a Athenian Literary Society, and she was scandalized that I'd wear a pink shirt.
Pink shirt and a white tie, huh?
Yeah.
Pink collar.
Pink color?
No, it's a pink shirt.
You mean that was not the style up there at that time?
No.
She took exceptions to it.
Well, back up a little bit and tell us a little bit about your parents, what their names were and where they came from.
Well, my father's name was Frank G. Hedrick, and he was born there east of Fanning, or north of Fanning, I don't remember which. And his father's name was Granville Hedrick. And my grandfather Hedrick was a Civil War veteran,
Granville?
Granville Hedrick. And he was originally from Pennsylvania. We called him a Pennsylvania Dutchman. And he went to California in the 49s.
Hunting for gold?
49, he mined gold out there, and he brought back some gold nuggets. And he gave Father some, and I think I still have them up there in the upstairs somewhere, if I can ever find them. And my father had a gold band ring made for my grandmother. And my grandfather, when she passed away, left it with my father. And my father left it here, and our daughter now has that gold band ring. Is that right? All right. My father had one brother and one half-brother and 3 full sisters and 1 half-sister. And they're all passed on.
Did you know them?
I knew all of them. One of my aunts worked for Father in the store. My Aunt Ida, she worked for Father in the store for a good many years. Father was entered into some other business. At one time for several years, he butchered every fall of the year, and he made a box to fit on the spring wagon, and he used to peddle beef around over the neighborhood around Fanning. Several years he did that.
In the wintertime?
And then in wintertime. And then he also bought cattle there at Fanning and shipped it out by carload to St. Joseph. He also bought wood. People in those days cut cordwood out there in the east of Fanning among the hills. And they'd bring cordwood there at Fanning, and Father would pay them, or they could take it out in the groceries. And we shipped a good many carloads of cordwood out of St. Joe, out of Atchison, out of Fanning for St. Joe at that time. And I think my father retired from storekeeping there, keeping store in Fanning in 1920, and it went under general church appointment for the general church. And he did a lot of missionary work in western Kansas, mostly there. And then when the Depression came along and the church retired a lot of their men on full time, my father said that they could retire him too. And then Father moved to Atchison in 1920 when he retired, and lived at 714 Parallel.
How many years was he under church appointment?
Oh, I don't know, 1920 to 1930.
At the time we were married, the folks vacated their home at 714 Parallel and rented it to us. I mean, they left it furnished, so we used their furniture that they had there. And they moved back up on the little place that they called it Sunny Slope, east of Fanning. And they lived there about a year or more, and then they went into business in the hotel at Troy. Then they ran a hotel in Lamoni, Iowa.
For a couple of years up in Lamoni. Then they moved here to Atchison, and Mother took kind of as a
She was a practical
nurse. She took care of Mrs. Lynch for a while, and Father lived out there with them and took care of the place. Mr. Lynch had already died at that time, and Mother took care of them. Then they bought this little place at 917.
1807 Chestnut. 1807 Chestnut.
Down by the creek, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Where
yeah.
we used to
Yeah,
go
1807
over the
Chestnut.
weekends.
That's right.
Lived there for a while, and then they.
Well, they
bought
lived
this
there a number of
place.
years,
Yeah,
and they
Yeah, they lived there 2, 3, 4 years.
Oh,
and they
more
had
than
some
that.
They had some acreage there, and Father had truck garden there, and he also raised plants and sold plants.
He could just do about anything, couldn't
Yeah. And then he run a little store there on 8th and Kansas Avenue for a while.
That was after that.
Yeah, after that. They lived there, went there in 1941 at 917 Larned, and lived there until her mother passed away. And then he rented the house, and then Father lived with us. And then later on, I bought the place, that place down there.
Well, he
before Father
deeded it
passed
to
away.
you.
He deeded it to me.
What year did he die in?
1955, March the 9th.
Now I might tell my mother's side of the story. Now, my mother's father's name was Josiah Price, and he came from Wales. He heard the Restoration movement in Wales, and people were from Wales and from England was moving to America, to Zion. But he came over here about the year 1840, a little after 1844, after Joseph Smith was killed. And he came to Nauvoo, and he saw everybody was moving out to Salt Lake City, and he went out there with them, he and his wife. And after he got out there and saw what was going on, what some of the abominable teachings that were crept into the church, such as polygamy and Adam God worship, one thing and another, he got disgusted with it and moved back to Donovan County and bought a house and farm south of Fanning. And he was the father of 9 girls. And my mother was one of the 9, of course. And after his second wife died, he lived with us at Fanning until he died. And I think he died in 1907 or 8, somewhere along in there. My grandfather Hedrick is buried in what is known as the Hedrick Cemetery, east of Sparks, Kansas. But my father and mother are buried in the cemetery east of Fanning. Also, some of my aunts are buried there. Then Father brought a lot of corn while he lived there at Fanning, and he shipped a lot of corn out of there, and he had an elevator, a little portable elevator run by a gasoline engine. And I had a boyfriend by the name of Roy Long, and we, of course, went barefooted, and it was a rainy day. It had been raining all day, and we went over there playing around this corn sheller. And I discovered that if you turn the switch on this corn sheller and touch the spark plug, you'd get a shock. And he was barefooted, and I was barefooted, and I told Roy to take a hold of that spark plug, and then I turned the switch on, and it about shook his socks off. Shocked him.
How about swimming in the old creek?
Oh yes, there was a creek run behind our house, and we'd go swimming in there. But most of the time we went to what was called Wolf River. It was a larger creek, and it had a deeper hole and more water there. We'd go down there every night in the summertime. There'd be a bunch come with the fan in there, 6 or 7 or 8, 10 fellas, and we'd all walk down to the Wolf River and go swimming. That was a lot of fun. Of course, sometime in the daytime, in the summertime, I'd go swimming 3 times a day, in the morning, the afternoon, and the evening.
Did you used to ice skate?
Yeah, we used to ice skate on the creek back of us. My mother would go with me when I first learned how to skate. She'd go over there with me, and she'd also go swimming. There's a bunch of girls that put on overalls and a shirt, and we had boys and girls, and mother and another adult woman would all take us to the creek, and we'd have a big time swimming in the raw water.
Wasn't there one winter when ice covered the road
yes.
to school?
One winter there was sleet over the ice, over over all the ground, and I skated to school on the ice skates for 2 weeks. Skated to school
How far
for
away
2
was
weeks,
school?
about a mile and a half, 2 miles.
Oh boy.
Well, that's about all.
You had to walk to school every day, did you?
No,
matter how?
I rode sometime, and then.
What did you ride in?
Well, there was a friend of mine lives next door to us, lived there in Fanning, by the name of Brown, Charlie and Mary Brown, and I drove a horse and a buggy to school. He would furnish the horse for 1 week, and I'd furnish the horse the next week. And we had a barn on the school ground where we kept our horse. And one spring came a terrible hailstorm. Oh boy, it did hail big as tennis balls, seemed like, came down there. And we had our buggy parked out there on the school ground, and the school ground was up high, and the road was dug down and cut through there, and this wind blowed our buggy off of that bank, and the shafts went back underneath the buggy. So the only way we could get those shafts back out from underneath the buggy was take the bolts out, and pull the shafts out, and put the shafts back up again.
Oh my.
To get that shafts out there, so we could hit
back up again.
so we could hit the horse into the shafts, drive home. We did that for several years when the Browns lived close to in Fanning.
Did they have? How many children did they have?
They had these two, Mary and Charlie Brown. They were
Oh, I see.
both of them were younger, huh?
The
But
three
Mary
of
was
you
Mary was my sweetheart when I was going to grade school.
Oh.
Yeah. And Charlie, he was younger than she was, but we had a lot of fun together. There was a tub of water out on the back porch,
Rainwater was it?
rainwater, and Lloyd Hopkins, he was older than me, but he was just a kid about the size of Douglas or a little bigger. He accidentally fell in this tub backwards and sat in this cold tub of water. And he jumped down and said, "I didn't do it, I didn't do it." Father got the biggest kick out of that.
And then you was trying to lick the paddle or something, and Mitty bopped you, and you. And
Oh,
you
yeah.
said, and Mitty hit
We was
me.
making some ice cream up there at Melissa's one time, and I don't know, the birthday party or making ice cream anyway. And I was just a little kid about the size of Douglas there, I guess. And my Aunt Melissa, Mitty, she was kind of a heavy eater, and she had to sample ice cream. And I wanted some ice cream too, and she knocked me away from it, and she wouldn't let me have it. And I said, "Don't eat." And I went to my mother crying. I said, "Aunt Mitty bumped me. Aunt Mitty bumped me." Bumped me away. I was just a kid.
Didn't your dad, did he buy a piano?
Yeah,
For his
my
wife?
father bought the first piano in the neighborhood around Fanning. They set it out in a boxcar. Train set it out there in the boxcar, and we unloaded it. Come in a big wooden piano box, and we took it into the house. And I had two girl cousins that was taking music lessons on an organ. They had organs at home, and they'd always
little harmonium organs that you
Well,
pump.
those
you little
pedals.
you
Yeah.
pedal. You
That's
had
the
a pedal.
harmonium.
And they would come to Sunday school in the summertime in Church of Fanning, and after church, they'd both of them make a beeline to our house to play on that piano. Bertha and Gladys Graves, Bertha Denimore, Bertha Denton, and Gladys Graves would make a run for our house and play on that piano. Oh, they did love that piano. We was the first one that had a piano around there for a long time.
You want me still to have it.
And Mother, of course, she was an organist for the church there, and she had a piano. And she
Your mother
enjoyed
was?
it. She was an organist at the church
I see.
for a long time. But Mother could play just church music. She couldn't play any high class music.
You had a church there, a pretty good sized congregation?
Yeah, there was a church there.
Who was pastor? Was Dad, your dad
my
pastor?
father was pastor there for 25 years or more. He was the priest. And he'd go over there in the wintertime, he'd go over there and start the fires. And build a fire there and have the church warmed up. I can see him yet, getting all dressed up with a stiff Katie on, black stiff Katie hat on, you know.
He did.
Going over to church to build a fire.
Is that
And I'd come over later on.
I mean, that's a smokestack
Yeah.
hat, you mean? Is that what they call them?
Stovepipe.
A stove right in the
Stovepipe.
middle
It was a
of the
derby.
middle of the church with a drum around on top of it, or you could stick your hands inside and get it warm, you know. smoke came up. This is the front of the stove. The smoke came up here, went around this thing, and then up through and out the chimney.
Hmm.
People come in there cold. They put their hand. It was hollow, you see. Put your hand in there and get warm.
Did it seem like you had a lot of snow in the winter time?
Yeah,
in
it
those
like
days?
had a lot of snow there. I had a bobsled snow, and the best sled on a bobsled, best sled on the hill. And I could hold about 6 or 7 on it at once. I remember one time I took this sled, the bobsled, to school, to Iola, hooked it on the back of my my buggy, and took it to school there. Charlie and Mary and I did. And it was slick, slow icy hill in front of the schoolhouse. And we got on that and going down the hill. And old Bruce Herring was sitting on the rear end. He had just bought him a brand new pair of overalls, and we slid him off, and one fellow still hung on to his feet, and he just left a blue streak behind us. We sure had a lot of fun with that.
Did you make that sled, or your grandpa?
Well, it was bought. The 2 sleds was bought sled. One of them was Charlie Brown's sled. He had a little.
Charlie Brown. How about that?
His little sled was a little smaller than mine. Mine in the back. But I pulled
then you
those
put
2
a-
sleds together, and in the kitchen, in our house at Fanning, I put a board across those 2 sleds, made them together, and made me a bobsled right in the house in the wintertime.
You do.
And then we took it to school the next day, and we took it back and forth to school all the time. Had a lot of fun.